What's going on, Summoners? Welcome back to another ProGuides video. I'm Kangas, and today we're covering all the upcoming changes on patch 11.23. This is a monster of a patch, so we're not going to waste any time and get right into it. So hit that sub button, and let's get going. So let me start by letting you know that Riot's taking a slight break from champion balance next patch, and that's just because of the sheer volume of system changes arriving with it. Starting off those system changes, we have dragons. 2 new dragons will join the rotation as they fit Riot's recent arcane theme and will add a distinct flavor to give the coming competitive split an iconic Season 12 polish. Hextech Drake is first, and it will provide bonus damage against enemies with more health than you, up to 5% per stack. And on top of that, the soul will grant players a brief second life after they die. As for the terrain change, 4 gas zones will emerge across the jungle, and inside of them, players will be granted camouflage. However, control wards, scryer's blooms, and other revealing effects will allow opponents to see you. Oh, and I know it's a little early on, but I want you to start thinking about our question of the day as the video plays out. And the reason for that is today's question of the day is, what change are you looking forward to the most? I'm not going to spoil you with mine, but when we get to it, I'll let you know, but let me know yours in the comments below. Second up is the Hextech Drake. For these bonus stats, it will reward the team that slays it 5% bonus attack speed and 5 ability haste for each stack. With its soul, attacks will be granted chain lightning and a slow on a moderate cooldown. And for this map transformation, you can find hex gates around the map, allowing players to travel great distances using them. Hex gates come in pairs, and when you decide to use one, you enter a brief interruptible channel that sends you to the faraway corresponding exit. But if those changes weren't big enough, we have an equally huge change coming to bounties. While we're currently all too familiar with the champion bounties in the game, Riot is implementing huge comeback mechanics through objective bounties in the preseason. Rather than hunting down a single-fed opponent on the enemy team, you can now work with your teammates to take down specific neutral monsters or turrets to claim a modest reward. As teams fall further behind, the reward will grow accordingly to a cap of 60%. The objectives that can potentially be marked for a losing team are outer, inner, and base turrets, as well as Baron, Elder Dragon, Dragon, and Rift Herald. While the numbers are tentative, here's a breakdown of the potential rewards. Baron, Elder Dragon, Dragon, and Rift Herald's base payout is 500 gold, inner and base turrets are 400 gold, and outer turrets are 250 gold. Teams will receive 15-second warnings when these bounties are about to become active, and also when they will expire. However, the teams that are trying to claim the bounty can extend the duration of them if they are in combat with the active objective bounty. So no worries if the bounty on Baron's about to expire in 5 seconds, just start up the Baron and then you can claim it still. Oh, and as a quick aside, with the focus being shifted back to objectives and playing with your team, now's a better time than any to hit up a coach at ProGuides.com. I'm telling you, they're really good teachers who can teach you how to not only solo carry, but also set up your team for success, which will be very important in this next season. But to wrap up the changes in the jungle, let's talk about a quiet critter that laners often overlook, but junglers will kill each other for, the Rift Scuttler. While the monster itself might not be too fearsome, the advantage it brings to the team that slays it is huge, and a little too much in the early game actually. Gameplay issues as well as player frustration have resulted in the strength of the first Rift Scuttle in particular. Whichever team can slay it gains a game-changing advantage early on, and as a result, the first, and I'll emphasize only the first, Rift Scuttler will be made squishier and significantly less rewarding in the preseason. For now, it will have 35% less health and also provide 80% reduced XP. It'll also be a little smaller to differentiate it from its successors, indicating its lower value. And personally, this is my favorite change in the preseason. I know, junglers, you probably hate me right now, but hey, I'm sick and tired of my jungler every single time getting mad at me for not joining them at the bottom reverse scuttle fight, so if I can just focus on laning, I'm a happy guy. But with the major gameplay changes covered, let's talk about customization next. A ton of champions have felt out of place since Season 11's item changes, and hopefully this coming preseason addresses what's been missing in some of the champions' loadouts. First up, there are 2 new mythic items coming, so let's start by breaking those down. First is Crown of the Shattered Queen. An easy way to understand the design of it is as an AP version of Shield Bow. It grants a sort of shield called Safeguard, something very similar to Malzahar's passive. While that shield is active, users will benefit from 10 to 40 bonus AP, and the shield itself blocks 50% of damage taken for a second and a half. After avoiding damage for 40 seconds, you regain Safeguard. For players that found Zhonya's to not be enough of a safety tool, you now have another option. Or if you really wanted to, you could build extra safe and get both. The stats that it provides are solid all around, granting ability power, health, mana, and ability haste. Pretty much everything that a mage wants. And even Shroud is the new item, and it's basically a tank champion's version of Imperial Mandate. It might even be a potential purchase for tanks outside of the support role in niche situations because of how its damage amplification actually works. While the stats that it provides for a mythic item are a little low, its built-in effect is powerful, making it a great pickup for champions who impact games with their crowd control and utility. Immobilizing a champion or being immobilized will cause the target and nearby enemies to take increased damage for 5 seconds. Similarly to Imperial Mandate, this is an aggressive purchase that heavily rewards a coordinated assault. Since all damage is amplified on the afflicted target, the potential gains in damage are gigantic. Think about a Malphite ulting onto an entire team while your team's firing on them. That's gonna hurt. That said, two other tank mythic items, being Frostfire, Gauntlet, and Turbo Chem Tank, will receive some changes to further differentiate the 3 major mythic tank items. While there aren't any stat changes coming up, Frostfire Gauntlet's slowing field will begin dealing damage. A new effect, Snowbind, will be introduced, allowing the owner's attacks to create a slowing field that deals magic damage to enemies in the area. Enemies that move across the area will also be slowed. Turbo Chem Tank will also have its damage increased by including a stack system similar to Dead Man's Plate. Moving and dealing damage grants stacks up to a cap of 100, and then at 100 stacks, your next basic attack deals magic damage to all nearby enemies, dealing 25% bonus damage against minions and 175% bonus against jungle monsters. Tank junglers in particular are going to love this new item as they'll see massive increases in their mid to late game clear speeds. But mythic items aside, we also have 4 new legendary items coming up. The first 2 are a pair of mana items similar to Mana Mune and Muramana, Winter's Approach and Fimbulwinter. After maxing out on the bonus mana, this item will transform into that Fimbulwinter. It's also worth mentioning that both of these items convert 8% of mana into bonus health. Fimbulwinter also provides a powerful passive effect. Immobilizing or slowing an enemy champion consumes 3% of your current mana and also grants a shield for 3 seconds. If more than one enemy is nearby, this shield is increased by 80%. It's looking to be a very powerful scaling purchase for tanks in the late game, so you like 10 Singed mains out there, rejoice. Assassins are also receiving a new item next patch, as Axiom Arc is an upcoming lethality item that will refund 25% of your ultimate's total cooldown when a champion that they've dealt damage to within 3 seconds dies. Assuming that there's no lockout, that means getting 4 kills will automatically reset your ultimate. Sounds like a pretty easy benta for Zed mains to me. Finally, there's Shadowflame. Shadowflame is an AP item designed to punish teams that rely on shields. Their owner will gain 10 to 20 bonus magic penetration against their target based on their health. The less current health, the more bonus penetration they gain. At 1,000 or less health, you gain a maximum, and at 2,500 or more health, you gain a minimum. Damage against targets that were recently shielded will provide the maximum bonus. Aside from new items, we have a ton of legendary items in the game receiving various changes to make them more unique and fun. Whether the definition of fun for you is personally having a good time or making sure that the enemies are miserable, I'm sure there's something for you in these changes. Cosmic Drive is first up for some interactive changes, as the stats have been changed, but in return, it's receiving a new passive effect to encourage specific playstyles. After damaging champions with 3 separate attacks or abilities, gain 30% movement speed decaying to 15% and 40 AP until leaving combat. So rather than being a boring piece of overloaded stats, Cosmic Drive now encourages players to go for a hit-and-run playstyle, or just utilize the burst of movement speed during crucial moments. Horizon Focus is also up for a small stat change, but more importantly, its effect is now triggered by slows. This includes Rylai's, so expect more champions to build this niche item. Also, some new builds for plenty of champions are certainly on the way when combining these two together. Next up is one of my favorite items, Demonic Embrace, which is receiving a really big adjustment in its numbers. Aside from extra base health and less base AP, the burn damage will now be reduced. In return, however, the item will convert 2% of bonus health into bonus ability power. So that leads into the big question, how does that work with Vladimir and his passive? Overall, this item is just more versatile and can more easily be included in tanky AP builds. It better fits the Battle Mage archetype, and I'm sure Swain, Rumble, and Vladimir will all love this item in particular next patch. Serif's Embrace will also have a new role next patch, as the item will no longer convert bonus mana into bonus AP, but instead into ability haste. You'll now also heal for 40% of your mana spent up to 25 to 50 plus 10% ability power per cast. This is essentially a purchase for champions who used to build Rod of Ages. Quick note, this change to Serifs plus the new Horizon Focus, I think that Rise is going to be in a really comfortable spot. But up next is Force of Nature with an improved passive that should be a little more noticeable. Taking damage from enemy champions will grant a stack of Steadfast up to a maximum of 6. Immobilizing effects will now grant an additional 2 stacks. Once you're at 6 stacks, you take 20% reduced magic damage and gain 10% extra movement speed. While the movement speed usually ends up being slightly less than before, the 20% reduction in magic damage taken is huge and will certainly be more noticeable than flat magic resistance. But on the trend of tank items getting changes, Knight's Vow is also up for a pretty big change as well. Expect a more symbiotic relationship rather than the parasitic one that it currently has. Although it's losing a little bit of base health regeneration, most players won't really feel that nerf. Instead, according to the blog post at least, it's a little confusing, but from our understanding, after binding to an ally, 10% of the damage taken will still be redirected to the owner. However, the person taking extra damage will also still heal for 8% of the damage that their bounded partner deals. But now, if the ally being protected had less than 30% HP, the damage redirection is increased to 20%. Again, the wording was a little strange here, so make sure you sub to the channel because we'll definitely cover this item in particular once we have more information on it. Finally, Abyssal Mask is going back to its roots. Nearby enemies will have their MR reduced, and as a bonus, the owner gains 7 bonus MR for each enemy affected by this. I welcome this change because now any tank can build this item. You don't need to have CC in your kit. I'm definitely looking at you, Mundo. But to wrap up the video, we have rune changes. Lethal Tempo is receiving a rework. Players gain a 6-second attack speed boost when striking at least one enemy champion, stacking up to 6 times. At max stacks, you increase your attack speed cap to 3.0. With a cooldown removed, this item is now the go-to for champions who rely on a flurry of basic attacks to deal damage. Next up is Glacial Augment, as it will create 3 glacial rays after you immobilize an enemy champion. These will path towards you and other nearby champions, creating frozen zones that slow enemies by 40% and also reduce their damage by 15% to allies, excluding yourself. And the last rune is First Strike, which is a new one being added in the preseason. Hitting an enemy with an attack or ability before they do grants 5 gold, as well as First Strike for 3 seconds. With this First Strike active buff, you deal 12% bonus damage against champions and gain 100% of that bonus damage as gold. For ranged champions, this is instead 70%. This one may seem a little nutty, but when you do the math, you don't get that much gold from it overall, but it's still kind of fun. But with all the changes covered, that wraps up the video. Hope you enjoyed it. Remember to answer our question of the day in the comments below, and also just give your general thoughts on the patch. Also check out the description for a link to join our Discord, where you can be part of our growing community and always be the first to learn about our future giveaways. But as always, everybody, best of luck on the Rift, stay hydrated, and I'll see you in the next one.